just while anyone is talking, just to reduce any background noise. So you'll find the little microphone icon down the bottom of your screen. If you move your mouse around now, you'll be able to spot it down the bottom of your screen. If you just click it, so there's a nice big red line through the microphone, that means you're on mute. And as well, if you want to keep your video on, you're most welcome to. If you need to turn it off for any reason, and that's the little camera icon down the left-hand corner, bottom of your screen as well, just there. But you're welcome to keep it on. It's quite nice for us speaking, not into the void. If you want to see who else is here, so we've got over 100 people in the room today. You can have a look through the participants list by clicking on the little silhouettes there down the bottom of the screen. That'll generate a pop-up list to the right-hand side for you, and you can have a look through and see who is here. You don't need to worry about sharing your screens today, but if you want to pop a question into the chat box, you can do so by clicking on the little speech bubble. Will pop up a little chat box for you, and you can either direct a question to everyone in the group, or you can pick an individual that you want to ask a question to, or if you want to say hello to somebody, you can pick them as well from the drop-down list on the right-hand side of your screen when you click on chat. I'd also ask you as well, I mean, there's a lot of people here, but if you wouldn't mind popping in your name and organization there, just so we know who is in the room with us today. Sometimes people are coming in on shared devices and so on, so it's hard to know what name is actually here with us. So if you wouldn't mind popping in, you can say hello and pop your name and organization into the chat box for us there. And if you're having any kind of techie issues, if Zoom is just confusing you a bit too much, you can pop in your question or your concern into the chat box there. Myself and my colleague Laura will keep an eye on that throughout the next hour or two, just to make sure that everybody is okay. Just to let you all know, we're recording today's event, so you'll be getting a copy of it sent to you by email afterwards as well. And to note as well, the leave button is down the bottom right hand side of your corner of your screen, I beg your pardon. So should you need to leave, you can click on that. A little window will pop up, just making sure you definitely want to leave, so don't be scared if you hit it by accident. Likewise, if your internet or your electricity give up on you, you will either get booted out and can rejoin by the same link that you got here already this morning, or you might find if you just wait a second, Zoom will regenerate itself and you'll find yourself back in the room by some kind of internet magic. So don't panic if you do get kicked out. Just to know it's not us kicking you out. And as well, I suppose for your own enjoyment, we'll be sharing slides throughout, so they will take up most of the screen, but you can toggle between your views. So that's in the top right hand corner when we go back to the normal view when I stop sharing in a second. You can toggle between the speaker view, which is the large video of the person who's talking, or the gallery view, which is kind of what you see here, where everybody's or as many videos as possible are fit into the one screen for you to have a look at. So I think that is me for now. I shall hand over to Emma, and I will see you again in a moment. But enjoy. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. You're very welcome. Give me a moment here while I share my screen. Just one moment. Okay. Excellent. So yes, as I said, hello everybody. We're very delighted to have you here today. This is our training on EU partnership building. My name is Emma Murta. I'm the European Programmes Manager at the Wheel. And if you haven't already, I know Sinead already prompted you, but if you're one of the people who are trickling in there at the end, please do put in your name, your organisation into the chat box so we can get an idea of who's in the room today. And before we get started, just to kind of note that this is the first training in 2021 for the Wheel's new Access Europe programme. It's funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs. It's a support and capacity building programme for civil society organisations around accessing and managing EU funding. So we know that one of the biggest barriers to engaging in EU funded projects is the requirement for partnership. And this is a common requirement across the vast majority of EU funding opportunities. There can be a number of reasons why this can be challenging, and we're going to attempt to address as many of them as we can today. Just before we delve in too deep, I wanted to try and get a gauge of the experience in the room. So I think, Sinead, if you can get the poll to pop up now using your Zoom magic, that would be great. You're going to see a kind of question appear in front of you on the screen, and it's going to ask you what is your current level of EU partnership experience, and you can vote there, and we can get an idea of where everybody is. And I think Sinead will be able to share the results of that with us soon. Yeah. Oh, it's popping up automatically. Excellent.
Oh, great stuff. I'm just watching it here. So we've got 84% of people have voted already.
Okay, great. So I want to make sure if other people can see that, hopefully, but I'm sure they can. I can see it, but I couldn't vote. So maybe that's because I'm a host. But yeah, hopefully other people can see that. So yeah, you can see that in front of me, I can see that 55% of people, it's moving in real time here, 55% of people have no experience, 35% of people have some experience, and 10% have a lot of experience. So we have a reasonable mixture there in the room. And I really want to kind of emphasize that you know, while what we're going to present today is a method for going about building EU partnerships, there is no one method. So people who have some experience or a lot of experience, you might want to share any tips or ideas, things that have worked for you in the chat box as we're going, and we'll attempt to kind of capture that and reflect it somehow in our follow-up. So we also wanted to kind of get an idea of people's attitudes to European partnerships and how they feel about the whole process. So maybe, Sinead, can I hand over to you as well to do our Mentimeter at this point? Will I stop sharing, Sinead? Yeah?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Perfect.
Great stuff. So you should all be able to see a nice big purple screen here. So either if you have a second device, if you have your phone handy, or you can escape and go to in your browser here. If you go to the website menti.com, so that's all at the top here, www.menti.com, menti.com, and it'll prompt you to enter in a code. So the code is up top here as well. It's 4363339. So that is 4363339. And if you get that far, you'll find the question on the website there. How do you feel about the process of building EU partnerships? And we've got, I think, 3 fields there where you can pop in one-word answers to answer that question. Brilliant. So hopefully you, like me, are seeing it all happening live here as we're seeing the answers filled out.
Lots going on there. That's good to see. I'm happy to see that excited seems to be the main one, but there's also a lot of, well, there's interested, confused, daunted seems to be another one, difficult, confusing, yeah, intimidating. Yeah, there's a lot. I think complex, challenging, minefield, tentative, stressed. What else? Clueless, okay, unclear, worried, messy, uneducated. Okay, excellent. Okay, well, I'm reassured to see that excited is the largest one. So that means that the most people are saying that, and interested and hopeful. But yeah, confused and daunted. This is, I suppose, to be expected. It is a confusing and daunting process that we're hopefully going to be able to illuminate a little bit today. So, oh, still changing. So can we save that, Sinead, as well? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll stay there throughout. So if you're, taking a minute to get to the page, you can still go there and fill it in, and I'll have it here. And I think we'll do another one as well at the end.
Yeah, we'll do another one. We're going to revisit this at the end in the hope that maybe there'll be a little bit less. Well, it's, as I said, it's promising to see that there's excited, but maybe there'll be a little bit more kind of confidence at the end after we've gone through the whole process. Because yeah, I see lots of overwhelmed, intimidating, stressed, all that kind of thing. So hopefully we can do something to make that a little bit easier. So is that okay then, Sinead? We'll leave that there and we'll revisit it at the end.
Great stuff.
Perfect. Okay. Can you see my green screen again? The experience in the room screen, Sinead?
Yeah, that's
perfect.
Good.
Just to make sure that we're switching between screens here. So look, that was just a way of kind of trying to gauge where we are in the room. There is a good mixture, and as I said, please feel free to kind of share tips and ideas as we go along. because it is kind of a thing. As I said, there's no exact methodology. It's just about, you know, trying to facilitate people to kind of give advice, and that's something we do through our European Projects Manager network at the wheel. So to kind of facilitate that peer learning to help people get to grips with this process, which can be very daunting and challenging if you're starting out. So to look at the agenda, we're going to cover today some key characteristics of EU-funded projects and EU funding projects and opportunities. We're going to look at EU partnerships. What are they and what are they not? So we get kind of an understanding of that. Developing networks, how to go about doing that in the first instance, and then once you actually have an idea or you want to initiate a project, to the process of kind of connecting to your EU partners. And then we're going to briefly look at creating a management handbook for EU partnerships, because I suppose I just want to touch on this because it's not just about securing the partners, that's the kind of first step, but starting your partnership off on a good solid footing is also important for kind of consolidating that partnership. So we'll just touch on that briefly towards the end, and we will revisit as well the Mentimeter to kind of see if attitudes have changed between now and the end of the training. And also there will be lots and lots of time for Q&A at the end, hopefully. And of course, you'll receive any kind of slides and follow-up materials soon after today's training. Just to introduce you to your speakers, so there's the Access Europe team, which is myself as European Programmes Manager, and my colleagues Emily Nelson and Christina Noor. They're our European Programmes Officers, and you'll be hearing from them at some different intervals throughout today's training. And then we're also very lucky to have Siobhan Wallace from Lergus. She's a Senior Support and Development Officer, and she's here to kind of provide that national agency perspective. So for those of you who don't know, and maybe Siobhan can kind of touch on this when she comes in later, that Lergus is the national agency for Erasmus+, one of the biggest and most accessible kind of EU funding opportunities for the Irish civil sector. And it's really valuable to have her insights from a national agency perspective in terms of what they're looking for in projects, their kind of views on partnership, and insights into the new programs that are coming out this year. So expectation setting, as I said, just to preface that there is no one way of doing partnership, and we're, you know, mixture of experience in the room. So do put your tips and ideas into the chat box as we go. This is just a method that works for me and that I've used several times when developing different projects. And it's kind of a mixture of insights from our European Programmes Officers, from Siobhan, from Lergus, and hopefully what we can present here is a model that will work for people. And yeah, feel free to just put your questions into the chat box as we go. If we can answer them as we go, I might ask the European Programmes Officers, or if it's something technical, the wheel staff, to just answer things as we go, but we'll also address things at the end if it's something that needs further discussion. So part one, the characteristics of EU funded projects and opportunities. So the first thing to note about EU projects is they are almost exclusively project-based. There are a handful of operation grants that are available at EU level through EU funding, but the vast majority of it is project-based. So this means that EU funding is not a source of core funding for your organizations. Projects are largely based on innovation, network building, exchange of best practice across countries, and kind of joint research and campaigns and initiatives and things like that. So while it's important to understand that EU projects are largely about developing its new and interesting activities, so that's what you need to kind of go into EU funding understanding that. So moving on then to competitive. So yeah, applying for EU funding is a competitive process. More often than not, you're competing against an entire continent, so you have to be prepared for that. It's important to be innovative. And to go into this project looking at how you can make something that's interesting, that's new, and that has a real value in European cooperation. So be aware of that, and also be aware that while you know, there is an investment period when it comes to EU funding. At first, you know, you might find that you're not successful and it can be very challenging, but by investing in the skills of your organization to apply for EU funding, to build their ability to manage European projects and to deliver them, you are potentially opening up a kind of stream of funding that can be really beneficial to your organization once you build that capacity and kind of crack that code. So it is an investment of time and learning, and a steep learning curve up front, but it's an investment into your long-term sustainability and the profile of your organization, because there certainly is opportunities at EU level that you wouldn't get at national level. So it can be hugely beneficial. Also, just to be aware that the budgets may seem huge when you look at them initially, but that's across the whole continent. So you have to be aware of that it can be competitive, and it's not as huge as it might seem at first. But we look into how you can develop your kind of capacity throughout today's training. So then policy based. So it's important to understand that programs follow policy. So program priorities are selected in line with furthering policy objectives. So it's important to be aware of these objectives and to stay up to date on them. So you can strengthen your EU development and the strength of your kind of applications that you submit by clearly demonstrating that you understand the policy that it is linked to, and that you're demonstrating how your work complements these policies. And then in terms of co-financing, it is important to understand that there is a co-financing element in a lot of EU funding opportunities. Not every program requires it, but most do. They don't always require that you demonstrate your co-financing exactly, but there is an expectation that there will be some investment on your end. So this can be an in-kind contribution, for example, but it depends on the program. Some programs like Horizon can be 100% funded. Most are around 80% funded, with some going as low as 60%. So make sure to check in on the co-financing rates and opportunities, and consider whether your organization might be able to meet this requirement before committing to the project development process. And then impact orientated. So the focus of EU projects, and increasingly I think all grant funding actually, is on impact. So what difference can you make? How will you measure and report on that difference? What will the short, medium, long-term results of this difference be? How will you sustain the impact of the project beyond the project's lifetime? This is what they want to know. So always keeping that in mind when you're designing projects, you know, to kind of emphasize at all points the impact and the difference that it's making. And then types of activities that are funded. This can vary according to the funding program, but in general, it's activities like knowledge exchange and transfer, comparative research, events and conferences. Mobilities is kind of EU speak for kind of study placement and visits and study trips abroad across different EU member states. Capacity building, training and workshops. Intellectual outputs, which again is kind of EU speak for a tangible output of some description. So a toolkit, a best practice guide, course contents, a report, a piece of technology, things like that are all count as intellectual outputs. Also new technologies, methodologies or approaches, the building of networks, for example, for professionals or for other target groups, and campaigns, initiatives and awareness. So those are the types of activities that you can expect to see funded through EU funded projects. What generally aren't covered in EU funded projects are capital costs and anything to do with, I suppose, investment into core funding. It's almost entirely, you know, activities that are funded. And then partnerships. So this is why we are here today. There's usually a requirement for partnership across pretty much all EU funding requires partnership. There are a few exceptions, but in general, there's the requirement for at least 3 partners from 3 different member states. We'd always say if the minimum is 3, always have at least 4, because in case somebody drops out right before you're about to submit your application and you miss your opportunity. But yeah, partnership is a key feature of European funding. And actually, Siobhan from Lergus, I think you're going to come in here and just maybe comment on why partnership is so important to the EU and why they build it in as a requirement.
Thanks, Emma, and thanks very much for inviting me along today as well. Yeah, so I've been working on EU projects as a program officer for nearly 15 years now. So yeah, I've seen a lot of, you know, the programs develop over a number of programs. This is the 3rd program, about to go into my 4th. EU program with Lurgus, which is going to be Erasmus Plus again. This is going to be the second Erasmus Plus program, just starting this year. So yeah, I mean, and I suppose through that I've been able to see firsthand the benefits to our organizations for participating in these type of projects. So like at that level, first of all, you know, if we look at the types of partnership and exchange, there's lots of different types of exchange. For example, there's, you know, exchanging good practice, so showing an organization in another country what you've developed and them showing you what they've developed. Also, just, you know, there might be differences between cultural aspects of organizations, and different countries approach different things in different ways. So being able to share those sort of cultural approaches to your work and to your activities as well, and exchange those with other partners across Europe. And also then just it'll also allows you to enhance your ability, I suppose, to work at an international level as well, which can be very beneficial for an organization. And then from the perspective of the EU, there's well, what are the aims at that level? Well, at an EU level, by allowing organizations to work together across different countries from the program countries across Europe, it really enhances the overall quality of education and training and how that's applied then within organizations. So it raises the quality of what's happening at that level all across Europe by encouraging organizations to and funding them to work together. And then also it means that because there's a lot of different cross-sectoral activity between business and education, it means then that there's better links between, it creates better links between business and education. And it means then that those systems are better aligned to the needs of the organizations that are working within those systems. So it also means then that what's being developed is more closely linked to aligned to the needs of the labor market, and then that transfers into the training that comes about as a result of those links. And it also means then that there's better recognition of qualifications, and also greater transfer then of students and workers across the EU, because it means that by working together, the systems are more closely aligned. And that means that that people and innovations can be more easily transferred. And then overall, then the overall result of all of that is that it helps to increase employability, because it means that the overall European workforce is better prepared, that they have the latest innovations, that they have the latest information, and that they're able to increase their employability, chances of employability. And then at an organization level, it also means that those all apply to your own organization. For example, it enhances the overall quality of your own work within your organization. It helps individuals within that organization learn new tools and skills by working with organizations across Europe. And on a personal level, we're told from many people that it increases their own motivation and satisfaction within the work that they do as well.
Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, and I can attest to that. Absolutely. There's challenges, but there's also huge opportunities and learnings and genuine, I suppose, partnerships in the truest sense of the word to be gotten from these kind of collaborations. There's people that I would consider good friends and colleagues that I've made through these kind of partnerships. So I can absolutely attest to that. And I suppose, yeah, it's just about not creating silos and ensuring that the EU is cooperating around things like innovation and transferring it as widely as we possibly can for everybody's benefit. So there's a real value to partnership in EU projects. So just, I suppose there's some kind of characteristics of EU projects overall, but to look at then European partnerships specifically, what are they and what are they not? So this is kind of some myth busting, I suppose. So what they are, I suppose, is an opportunity to learn and to share, as Siobhan was saying, to connect with and influence policy at EU level. You know, as I said, policy and programs are closely linked. By working to further policy objectives and feeding back your experience and learning, you're kind of helping to shape and mold the policy of the future and the Europe of the future, which is, you know, what a lot of this is about. It's an opportunity to be innovative. I know that core funding and operational funding is always a challenge, but it can be frustrating when there's not, you know, when you find that certain funding opportunities are not going to be able to address that. But there is also huge opportunities in this type of innovation-based funding. So there's always, and the fact that there's partnership and you can connect with different methods of different organizations that are doing really interesting things throughout Europe and learn from them in a very kind of open and cooperative way. There's something very special about that as well. They're an opportunity to access new funding opportunities. It's not just about, I suppose, the projects that you develop. There's also, once you build kind of European partnerships and networks across Europe, you are opening yourself up to being invited into projects and to have new opportunities that you might not have even considered presented to you and to your organization, to your staff, to your colleagues. And so there's a huge amount of kind of enrichment and opportunity that comes with building European partnerships. But there's also the opportunity to collaborate equally and democratically. And I suppose this is something, if people ask me, what did I take away from my experience of European projects and being part of partnerships, this is for me, one of the truly great things about EU consortiums, because good consortiums are often very eclectic. I've been in ones where there was a mixture of research institutes. There was us as like a tiny locally based NGO. This wasn't with the Wheel, this was in my previous life. I was with a very small community group. We were along in that partnership. There was also software companies. We had a world-renowned expert who was included in the project specifically, even though she was outside of the EU, she was brought in specifically for her expertise. And we were all working together on this kind of shared challenge and problem. And yes, I suppose the coordinator of the project had overall responsibility and more influence and control over the project, but it was a very democratic partnership, all of us working together on this to tackle this issue. Everybody had a role, everybody had skills and expertise to kind of bring to the table, and everybody was kind of equally respected and appreciated, regardless of, you know, where they were coming from. In the partnership, we were all working together very democratically, and there was something very special about that doesn't generally happen in other environments. I haven't had that experience in anything other than an EU project, where you're working with different people from lots of different sectors and getting the benefit of their experience and their skills and working together in a very equal footing. So that for me is my key takeaway. But it's important to understand that I suppose is what the opportunity, what European, the positives of European partnerships, but also to understand what they are not, which is sometimes I can kind of hear from people that the requirement for partnership in a European project is kind of an inconvenience. It's an afterthought, something that they tack on because they want to deliver on this idea, and you know, there's a requirement for partnerships, so they kind of have to source a couple of partners to plug into their project. It's not subcontracting or outsourcing. So, you know, I've had experience in one consortium where I was certainly treated by the coordinator as though I was a subcontractor doing work for them, as opposed to an equal, valuable partner in a partnership. And that wasn't a nice experience. So it's important to understand that it's not subcontract, it's not outsourcing work. It's a democratic partnership, as I said. It's not a tick box exercise. It's just not about kind of like, oh, okay, we need a partner, so we'll just, you know, plug this person in here. And it's not without risk either. And that's not just with partnership, it's with projects in general. Projects are inherently risky. That's why they're called projects and they're not called operational work. There are no guarantees. There's when taking on EU projects or any other type of projects, or when it comes to partnering with external organizations, you can't control every potential factor that might go wrong when partnering with another organization, and you can't completely exclude yourself from risk, but you can be as prepared as possible and to avoid it or to deal with it if it happens. So yeah, it's just about an overall understanding that partnerships are a kind of fair democratic team working together on an issue or on a goal. Everybody should have a role to play. Everybody should have an equal part in that project. And it's about, I suppose, understanding that you're a team. It's important to kind of come at it from that perspective. And then in terms of developing networks, okay, so we've looked at what partnerships are and what they're not. We have an understanding of what we can expect from European projects in terms of their characteristics. But now it comes to the actual practicalities of, okay, how do I go about building a network? I've decided I want to connect with other European partners. I understand the risks. I understand that the possibilities. I understand how these partnerships should be based on equality, but how do I go about actually building a network? So the first thing you could try is there are partner finding tools or portals, sometimes they're called. These are some that are hyperlinked, and once you receive the follow-up files, you'll be able to just kind of click through and explore them if you like. Some are better than others. They can work really well. I found one really good partner through the Apali platform, which is actually handled by Lergus as well. So we'll make sure to include, if Siobhan sends us on any links and stuff like that, we'll include that in our follow-up as well. This is a kind of an adult learning online kind of network, and it has a partnership finding function to it, and as I said, we found really good partners through that that we've worked with twice now in 2 different projects, so that was that one can be very useful. There's other ones there that are for different areas. Obviously LinkedIn and Facebook are there as well. There's lots of Facebook groups that have varying levels of quality, I suppose, in terms of finding partners. So it's something that you can kind of look into in terms of kind of exploring partner finding tools and finding ones that are relevant to your area of work. As I said, some are better than others. They can work, but they're not, they really are just for making the connections. There's a lot more to partnership building than that. They're not a kind of solution. They're just one way that you can help to find potential partners, but there's still, I suppose, the whole partnership building process that follows. Another tip for finding partners, and this one again it can be really useful, is to get involved in EU networks. There's an EU network for just about everything. I've used this example several times before, but it's since finished, but there was once a network called ENA, ENNA, which is the European Network of Network Associations, which the Wheel was part of. So it's a perfect example of how there's a network for absolutely everything. No matter what area you are working on, there's some kind of network that's there at EU level, that brings together organizations from throughout Europe working on this same topic. So it's really valuable, even outside of European projects, to start looking at these networks and connecting in with them and seeing how can you learn from them. So because they're obviously you know, exchanging kind of models and best practice, and that can be something that's very useful and enriching to your work, even just from a learning point of view. So I would encourage people to reach out, find out what networks are active in their area of work, join, be a participating member of them. It can keep you up to date with EU policy in this area. It can keep you up to date in any kind of funding opportunities that are coming up or consultation opportunities. And you can use them to connect with partners and learn about interesting things that they are doing. And again, this is something that has worked for the Wheel, actually being part of that ENA group, ENNA. We found 2 or 3 partners that we've partnered with in European projects through participating in these networks. So this one is really effective and well worth investing in, even if you were never to pursue European projects. There's also using your existing contacts. You'll be surprised how many organizations here in Ireland are working with through European projects or otherwise with partners throughout Europe. So many of them might be active, as I said, in EU projects, but I think that personal recommendation can go a long way. So if there are other people working in your field that you've heard are doing European projects, or you can kind of ask about, being able to have them recommend a partner to you, I think can be really beneficial. And it's all, I suppose, in the spirit of exchanging best practice. And that's something that we do as well at our European project manager network at the Wheel that we convene. It's a group of people who are active in EU projects, and it's there for, I suppose, exchange of best practice and partner finding tips and things like that. So we'll certainly include information about that in the follow-up, and if people are interested in joining that. But it is, you know, linking in with people in Ireland who are already active in EU projects and can kind of give you some tips and mentor you is really valuable. Also do your research. So I suppose Google is your friend. It's not an elegant solution by any means, but one thing that I found extremely effective, I've found many partners simply by researching EU funded projects that have already been done in the area in which you are interested. So for example, if you're interested in doing a project around social enterprise, you could do social enterprise EU funded project search, and a bunch of different project websites will pop up. Because almost every project will have a website, and on that website there will be listed partners, and usually their contact details or links to their organizational websites. And from there you have you can easily kind of link in with partners that sound interesting, that are doing things that you would be interested in sharing in, and it's usually very easy to find them and to reach out and just say, hi, I see you did X project, we're developing Y similar project, would you be interested in a conversation around partnership? So as I said, this has been a really effective method for me. And what's great about it is, that they already understand the language of EU projects, that they're already experienced, and that they are obviously already open to collaboration. So that can be really valuable. Once COVID is over, of course, you could consider investing in partner finding trips. So this can be quite cheap and accessible thanks to Ryanair, that you could look at organizations or locations around Europe that you are doing really interesting things in the area in which you're working, and you could aim to go there on a kind of study trip to link in with several organizations and to kind of scope them out as potential partners. I think that face-to-face connection is really valuable. It's what we're all missing at the moment in terms of kind of trying to imagine, can I work with these people? Is there something interesting here that I can learn from them? And also keep an eye on conferences and events in Brussels. There's on the EU websites, there's ways to kind of sign up to newsletters and things like that to keep you updated about what events are going on. And these are often really good networking opportunities, because they're bringing together people across Europe who are obviously interested in the same topic or subject area, and in ideas in that area. So it can be a great way to go, to participate, to be ready to network and to find partners. And then also just to be aware that the idea of building a consortium from scratch, like if you're looking to have 6 partners in a project with different roles, that can seem really daunting, or the idea of just building an EU network in general can be extremely daunting. Like, how do you even go about that? But it's just to remember that it's very rare that you have to kind of completely build your network from scratch. It usually just starts with 1 or 2 good contacts, and then through them you reach their contacts, and through them you reach their contacts, and before you know it, it is a network. So not to think about it as trying to build it from that you're going to go into this trying to build an entire network from scratch. You really just want to make a couple of really good contacts of interesting people who you could see yourself working with or learning from, and then from there kind of seeing it grow and expand. And just as well, a final tip, I suppose, when it comes to network building is to use your national contact points. We're lucky in Ireland to have really excellent contact points that are very accessible and can be very helpful, and in advising you about your project, and they may be able to help you too around partnership. So again, Siobhan, and I might stop share here because I think you might have a slide about this, do you? Just about what Lergus can do when it comes to partnership facilitation.
Yeah, I just have the one slide, but I think it's I'll share it because it does have a link to our activities that we use for our network, so for partner finding. So can you see that slide there?
Yep, we can. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it's just then to talk a little bit about the type of networking activities that are that we host as national agencies within the Erasmus Plus program. So under the Erasmus Plus program, obviously we understand the need for partners to be able to organizations to meet with other partners and be able to develop those partnerships. So what national agencies organise are transnational cooperation activities, and we have a specific budget for funding these types of activities. And there's a range of different activities that can happen under these transnational cooperation activities. The main one is contact making seminars. These have been, we've been running these for years. They're very well developed under the youth side, under the Salto Youth network, but also more recently under the education and training side. So there's, every year each national agency would host several contact making seminars. And the idea, sometimes they're on particular themes, sometimes they're within different sectors. It just depends where we see the kind of priority areas in terms of how we organize them. And that's just a photograph from the last face-to-face one that we organized in Lurgas, which was in the Hilton Hotel in Kilmainham there in February last year, end February, so literally just before the first lockdown. And I realize now just what a great event it was, and being able to have that opportunity for organizations to meet. This was on digital learning, this particular thematic seminar. And as a result of that, it allows, I think there was something like 24 different countries involved in that. So it just gives you an idea of the scope of being able to meet partners at these type of activities. And I've shared also the link to our website, where we list all of the upcoming contact making seminars or thematic seminars. Now, obviously, it's a little bit thin on the ground at the moment because national agencies have been a little bit reluctant to organise contact making seminars virtually because it's very much a chat, kind of get to know people. There's a social aspect to it as well. I know I'm bringing back memories here. There's dinners and all of that aspect that really can help build those relationships between you and another person, in order to be able to give you the confidence to be able to feel like, yeah, I could work with this person for the next few years in a project. But we are starting to run them again. There's other countries that have organized some contact making seminars for this year. They're not up there yet because we're just finalizing our work program for the year for 2021, but they will start to come onto that link in the next few weeks. From our point of view, we're organizing a virtual one for later on in this year. And then we're also organizing a face-to-face one, hopefully for this time next year, for small scale partnerships. So yeah, so there are opportunities there under the Erasmus Plus program that are funded by the program. So you don't pay for these events or activities. They're funded by the Erasmus Plus program. And there's a few faces that I can see in the participants this morning who have participated in these events over the years and have been able to start their European partnership journey through these types of activities.
Thank you for that, Siobhan. Yeah, and while I have you, I might just ask as well, because there's been a couple of people who are asking about Britain in the comments and Brexit and everything. So I suppose my understanding is that definitely not, they can't be included in partnerships since the beginning of January when Brexit was absolutely official, but maybe you can.
Yeah, actually we haven't received any official communication from the Commission on this, so we're waiting on that official communication. So but yeah, our understanding is the same, that because the UK has decided not to participate in the Erasmus Plus program going forward, it means that you won't be able to have a UK partner going forward. The last there was a call in October, and that was the last time. That was under the 2020 call, so that was the last time you were able to have a partner from the UK. There are going to be some different exceptions for higher education, but broadly across the program, our understanding is that you won't be able to engage with a UK partner going forward.
Sorry, this is Geraldine Canny. I'd like to talk for other European funding, if I might, under Horizon Europe. So it's true that currently they can't participate, but there's apparently an agreement was agreed on just before Christmas, and that is pending negotiation, and that would allow them to participate in Horizon Europe, not, as you mentioned, in Erasmus Plus or in EIC. But so we therefore wait the outcomes of these negotiations to see if they can be associated as they previously were. For example, in MSc Marie Curie funding, the UK was a big winner, and that if they weren't, that would open up certain opportunities. But you're correct. I mean, the current status is they can't, but from a lot of information I see on social media, people are hopeful that something can be negotiated. We simply have to wait and see. And sorry to interrupt, just to
not at all, Geraldine. Thank you for that. You know, there's so many different EU funds, and it's impossible to get kind of perspectives from everybody. But absolutely no, there may well be a chance that they could kind of, there are non-EU member state countries that participate in various programs and have, you know, arrangements in place for that. So we can see how that works out. But certainly right now, yeah, I think we can proceed at the moment that they're not part of this, and that I suppose there's also opportunities to be had from that. A lot of people, we'll touch on this in a moment, but a lot of people, organizations throughout Europe who would have relied on Britain for partners, and especially English-speaking partners, are now kind of open to other partnerships and other countries, and looking for English-speaking partners. And so I think there's an opportunity for Ireland in that as well.
Yeah, and also just to add, Emma, you mentioned earlier that you had a partner in a project that was brought in for their expertise from outside the programme countries. So we're hoping that the UK would be able to participate in that capacity, where if they can bring essential added value to a project, then they would be able to participate as a third country.
Yeah. So in exceptional circumstances, you can kind of have that. So I see other questions popping up, but we will have time for questions towards the end. We just have a lot to cover, so we're going to plow on anyway. Somebody just mentioned in the comments that William Brown said if you can access the EU Information Day, which is in March, it's a brilliant way of meeting partners, but it will be virtual this year, obviously. So thanks for sharing that, William. And any other tips or anything that people have had, please feel free to kind of share them in the comments as well. So just want to make sure then that you can also see this. Go back to my slides. Okay, so you should be able to see that again. So yeah, it's great to have those, and thanks everybody for sharing their kind of ideas around that. We'll try and capture as much as we can, and you know, pass that on in the follow-up. And as well as that, like, you know, we have Siobhan here from Lergus today, but if you have ideas that this is, and Lergus is or Erasmus Plus, I should say, is the education and training, youth and sport program, but there are, you know, Geraldine shared her experience as the contact point for the Marie Curie Sklodowska actions, and there are lots of other European programs as well, and I suppose Access Europe can signpost you to the relevant program that fits your idea. And I suppose just another note on Access Europe and partnership, while we never discourage people from leading on projects, if that's what they want to do, there is a lot to be said for being a partner in a project first and being invited into a consortium, ideally by an experienced coordinator, because you can learn a lot from that process. Learning the ropes through a kind of lower stakes role as a partner in a project can be enormously helpful and can really help you to kind of gradually build your capacity before taking on the responsibility of coordinating a project yourself. So with this in mind, and the fact that, as I said, there is now a gap in the English-speaking partner market out there in Europe because of Brexit, Access Europe is really eager to find ways to promote Irish organisations as partners to other organisations throughout Europe, and to try and broker partnerships where Irish organisations can be invited into consortia. So we have a plan for this, which my colleague Christina is leading. So Christina, I'll actually hand over to you now, because I think you have some slides that you want to share, and you can explain a little bit more about that for us.
Yes, so I hope you are now able to see my screen, and the PowerPoint that I created. First of all, my name is Christina Noor. I'm European Programs Officer at the wheel. I'm working for the program Access Europe. It's my third week, so quite new to the team, and I'm sure in the next couple of months we will have more opportunities to meet and talk. My main task in this program will be to build European-wide networks, partnerships, to promote you as Irish civil society organizations to Europe, and to help you find project partners in other EU countries. So I will speak for the next minutes about one tool that we would like to use. It's a matchmaking tool, and it will be an online partnership platform. I will show you on the next slides how it could look like. I must warn you, we will start building it now, so it's not existing yet. These are only examples. Just to let you know, why are we doing this platform? We want to showcase you to other civil society organizations who are interested in setting up partnerships for youth funding and for projects. We want to promote you as potential partners. And this platform is for you if you already have a project idea and you are looking for partners in other EU countries, or if you maybe doesn't have a project idea yet, but if you're interested in just building a partnership and would like to be found by others. So our idea here, how will it look like? So what kind of features would it provide? We will have, or you will have the opportunity to create a profile for your organization with a nice overview here. You will be able to search, or like those interested partners from other countries, of course, will be able to search, to filter all organizations over here. Again, these are only examples how it could look like in the future. You will have a dedicated website page for your profile. There you can show what you're working on, what are your topics, what is your mission, what are your goals, what is your field of expertise, what would you like to learn also, of course, from others. And then, of course, there will be the possibility to contact you and so that people can reach out easily and set up something. These are just like two examples of how this website could look like, and we are working, of course, on developing other features also for this website, but we don't want to promise now too much. What is possible right now is to already start creating your profile. In the follow-up email to this event, we will send around a link. It leads you to a form, and in this form we ask you some questions. You see some examples here. Why are we starting this process already now? In our experience, creating such a profile is a delicate task, and it requires some attention. You will be literally presenting your organization to the whole of Europe. So we really recommend to put some thought into it and to make sure that what you are saying about yourself is of high quality. We are here to help. So if you have questions, reach out to me. If you need support, if you're unsure how to present yourself, just let me know. And also maybe this is of importance to you, if you're wondering. Of course, as the Access Europe team, our responsibility it is to spread this platform then to all of Europe, or throughout Europe. So we will make sure that your profile will be seen and that it's circulated. We have a European network, we have national agencies, we have the contact points. So this will be spread, this information, it will also be seen. Yes, this is what I wanted to present to you, what will be part of our future work and what you can benefit of this program at Access Europe. If you have any recommendations, because we are aware of the fact that there are out there already existing platforms or partnership platforms, and of course we have a look at that also. So if you have any recommendations for us for our work, any useful links, just send them to me in an email. I would be super happy about that. Yes, and I think this is already what I had to say.
Excellent, thank you so much, Christina. So I think this is a really interesting kind of opportunity, I suppose, to showcase Irish organisations to Europe. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach and networking, trying to encourage organisations to think about Ireland as partners, and to have this kind of database of organisations will be really valuable, and kind of high quality profiles where people can search and think, okay, this is an organisation that's doing something interesting, I'd like to work with them. So it's a real opportunity to present your work and to present what it is you're interested in, and it's a good exercise in and of itself, even just to sit down and then to think, what is it I would want from EU funding? You know, what am I interested in, and you know, how can I use EU funding to help kind of further strategic goals? So just even the process of completing this profile can be really useful and kind of food for thought, and can help kind of clarify what your vision is with EU funding, and it can be you know, sorry, it can be a helpful exercise just for that. So we will be following up in the follow-up email with a link to where you can start putting together that profile. And as Christina said, just to, if you need kind of help with that and to make your profile as good as it can possibly be, you know, we can help you with that process. So at the moment, I think we're about halfway through now. Yeah, we're just coming up to 11. So I wanted to kind of take a 5-minute break just to get people the chance to grab a tea or a coffee, and you know, to have a bit of a stretch. And when we come back, we'll have a look at the process of actually reaching out to partners, initiating your project, the impact of the new EU financial framework and on COVID on project design, and finally we'll have a look at a short case study as well. So let's say we're at 10:57 now. We'll give you until 4 minutes past, just to be nice and general. So we'll be back here at 4 minutes past, and we'll pick up from there. So thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, maybe we can start coming back now that it's 4 minutes past. Okay, I can see some people popping up there, so I'm going to take it that you're all back now. And I tried to answer some questions in the chat box during the break there, so hopefully that helps. But if there are any questions, of course, like as I said, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but also anything that you have questions arise around EU funding, around signposting to the relevant contact point, anything like that, you can get in contact with the Access Europe team. You can email me at emma@wheel.ie or just europe@wheel.ie, and that'll also get to us. Yeah, we can help you with anything like that. So now that we've finished our little break, we're going to look at part 4. So this is going to make that small. Okay, so this is the whole process of reaching out. So we've got a good understanding of partnerships and of the first steps to kind of making those connections. And we've also looked at the benefits of being a partner first and the Wheels kind of partnership database that we're working on, and that's still very much a work in progress and kind of early days, but that we will be trying to launch in the next couple of months, and we're looking for initial profiles to kind of get started. But let's say that you do want to coordinate a project and you have identified some partners through the networks that you've built or the portals that you've used or the kind of research, the Google research that we talked about. How do you actually reach out to them and communicate your projects effectively? So the reason I always share this as part of this training is because the first time I ever did this, it was a complete and utter mess. I didn't really know half of the information that I needed from them or what they needed from me, and it was all quite rushed, and I felt like I'd given myself loads of time, but it was all very last minute in the end, and I just wasn't really sure how to communicate the idea that I had effectively, and so it ended up being unnecessarily kind of stressful and difficult. So after a few tries, I've kind of developed a kind of step-by-step system that really helps to streamline this process, and that really has made the whole process of it a lot easier and simpler for me anyway. So it's something I wanted to share, but again, just to emphasize that this is in no way an exact science. So other people who have experience with these kind of projects might want to share their own tips or their own ideas in the comments as well, and we really welcome you to do that, and we'll do our best to capture them. But for me, this is a process that has worked really well and helps to make, you know, something that is undeniably stressful, even when you're used to it. You know, writing a large project application, putting together a partnership is stressful. It's a lot of work, but if we can make it a little bit simpler, then let's try and do that. So the first thing I always do is I work on a concept note, and don't skip this step. That's always my key piece of advice. Even when I do general training around grant writing, I always encourage people, when there's no partnership involved even, I still encourage people to do a concept note. It really forces you to put kind of structure and form and to think about outputs and targets for your idea. So until you do this process of translating the idea from something that lives in your head into something that is an actual project, and you know, you've taken this time to break it down and to structure it, it's all quite kind of nebulous, and what you'll find is that when you're questioned about it, it'll kind of start to fall apart because you won't have thought about all of these kind of things, all these little technicalities that are so important. So I really, really encourage people to use the concept note structure, and you will receive the template. This is the template that I use. As I said, it's not, nothing is an exact science here. This is something that I developed, that I use to communicate projects, but you might be able to adapt it for your own needs, or you know, work on it or develop it yourself. But I always kind of look at things like a working title. I kind of specify the action, the duration of the project, when is the deadline. I like to put in the deadline of the actual funding opportunity, but also kind of an internal deadline of when we want to get the project done. An overall budget. At this point, you don't have to have worked out all of the details of that, obviously, but just a general ballpark figure. Priorities addressed in terms of linking it back with the call. That's very important. If you have an idea and it's, you know, could be the best idea in the world, but if it's not closely linked with the priorities of the funding call, then it's not going to happen. You're wasting your time. So to kind of force yourself to kind of demonstrate here, well, how are we linking in with the priorities, and how clear is that connection? partners. So at this point, you might have already had 1 or 2 partners lined up, and you know, you can list them here, or you can look at the kinds of partners, like maybe we need a technical partner if there's a technology piece, or if there's a piece of research that needs to be done, you know, we need a research partner. So you're kind of either your actual partners or your ideas for partnership, or kind of requirements for partnership can be listed here. Target groups, this is very important in EU funding, that you think about things in terms of who it is you're targeting. Even using Erasmus Plus as an example, you know, you might decide, okay, this is an education project, so it belongs within Erasmus Plus. But even then, within Erasmus Plus, it's divided by target groups. So there's adult education, there's youth, there's vocational education training, and there's youth, adult education, and there's school education. Yeah, that's the other one. So you need to think about, well, who are we targeting here, and be very clear about that, and even think about, you know, what's a typical person, you know, within your target group that you might be looking for. It might be, you know, entrepreneurs between the age of 20 and 30 and who are working in the area of sustainability or whatever, you know. So be quite clear about your target groups, your rationale, demonstrating, you know, why you feel this project is necessary, your key kind of outcomes of the project, key outcomes or outputs as well. So this really kind of encourages you to think about things in terms of results and impacts that I mentioned, and you might kind of list your outputs as well, the actual tangible things that might be produced as a result of this project. So for example, a new piece of research or a new piece of technology might come from this project, so you list those there. And then just a kind of brief summary to kind of challenge yourself to sum up your project in, you know, a couple of 100 words or something there. And by doing this process, it really helps you to clarify this idea in your head. And then when, you know, you've identified through your research, you've identified a few different partners who you think could play a role in this project and that you'd like to invite in. And so when you're reaching out to them, you're able to kind of write your email and say hello and introduce yourself, and we're from, you know, X organization, and this is what we do. If you have a profile on our database, when that's ready, you can link to that, and it'll outline who you are and your mission and goals and a little bit about your organization. So yeah, you put in all of that stuff, and then you say, we're working on this project, we're really interested in partnering you, attached is our concept note. And it's a nice kind of efficient way of communicating your project, where it kind of answers all of their immediate questions and can give them a good idea whether this is something that they would be interested in. Just another note, you know, you're circulating this to your partners. Think about how much time you think you will need to do this, and add substantially more, double it if you can, because it can take a long time for this initial process. Once your partnership is confirmed, it can kind of move quite quickly, but just, you know, this whole process of finding partners can take some time. And it's also you know, the more time you allow yourself, the more selective you can be. If you feel like, you know, oh, we need X amount of partners, so even though I'm not sure about this person, we're just going to include them because we need to do this to get the application in. I mean, you really want to avoid that. You want to make sure that you're happy with all of the partners. And that kind of brings me on to the next point, which is, you know, we all live on Zoom now, so why not add another one to your calendar? Always look to, you know, meet with your partners virtually if at all possible. In that first instance, once they get back to you and are like, okay, this sounds like an interesting project, I'd like to learn more about it, or we'd definitely be interested in participating, try and set up a Zoom call as quickly as you can, just to kind of feel them out. And I have this kind of but look for red flags kind of thing. You have to, you know, a partnership, an EU funded project, it's kind of a unique experience. It's very intense. You know, you're working together quite intensely on different on these shared objectives over 2 years usually, is the kind of standard. So you're forced to kind of work quite closely with these people who are kind of strangers to you. So you know, look for things like, can you see yourself working with these people? Do you think they're going to be communicative? Do you think they're going to be easy to work with and to talk to? Like, so you're kind of using this opportunity to meet with them and to discuss the project and the ideas and the potential and what they might like to do with it, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But you're also kind of scoping them out and thinking like, okay, can I work with these people? Is this realistic? Do these people seem like good partners? And then once you've done that, and you've kind of decided, you know, and just to note as well, you're under no obligation just because you've reached out and invited people to have the conversation. You're not under any obligation to bring them forward in your partnership. You can decide, you know what, they seem okay, but I just don't think they're the right fit for this project. That's absolutely fine. Or you just can't see yourself working with them, or you could see them being a bit difficult or whatever. You can say, okay, well, it was lovely meeting with you. I'll let you know how and you can absolutely decide not to bring somebody into a partnership. But once you have kind of, you're deciding to bring whichever ones you've selected and you're going to bring them through to the next step. The next step is to kind of flesh out. So from that concept note, you're going to look to add more information, maybe based on the conversations that you've had. And that includes maybe a timeline. Of course, you can use a Gantt chart, but maybe the artsy bit of me likes this quite visual kind of representation, as it helps to kind of picture the whole project. And you can kind of organize it by, you know, you've got your meetings there. You've got, yeah, your meetings, your outputs, your kind of key deadlines, and then all of the kind of project management stuff that's going on throughout the project. So you can start by adding in a timeline to kind of, it's this process of kind of slowly refining down your idea from that nebulous kind of thing that lived in your head, and structuring through this kind of process to eventually be ready to actually start writing the application form. So I would start then by, as I said, starting with the timeline, and then start with a general budget, but beware that, you know, your budget will probably change and evolve as the project idea kind of changes and evolves and takes structure as you are writing your application. So, you know, you'd start then, once you've kind of initiated your partners in, you'll start by giving them a bit more information, the timeline and the budget, and maybe elaborating more on your concept note. And then you will, once that kind of information is available and you've disseminated to them, and you've maybe discussed it via email, and you've got their ideas, then you can start with, again, the more meetings the better. I think, you know, you really need to, you're committing to working with these people for quite you know, a period of time. So again, you're kind of, you're meeting with them to discuss budgets, roles. This is where you actually start to think about designating roles, and, you know, who's going to do what and what are they going to be in charge of. And, you know, that's very important when you're building a partnership. I think evaluators can see very clearly when it's an uneven partnership, when it's like, oh, the Irish coordinator will do this and this and this and this, and there's very little responsibility or meaningful role for the partners. They want to see that, like, well, why are these people part of the project? What kind of value are they bringing? So you can have that kind of initial conversation around that. Now that you've kind of put more structure and form to the idea, you can kind of look to consolidate your partnership a little bit better and start kind of choosing roles and responsibilities. But again, always looking for red flags. I always emphasize this because, you know, this is the point where if you're starting to feel like these people aren't being very communicative, or maybe they're being a bit difficult, or, you know, they're not very forthcoming with information and they're not being very helpful in the process, you really have to ask yourself, like, do I want to bring these people through to the application? Can I see myself working with them? So at all points, you're kind of looking for red flags. And again, this is why it's easier and better to kind of start the process early, to give yourself time that if you just think, okay, this person isn't the right partner for this project, I just have a feeling they're not going to be easy to work with, they've been very slow about all their communications, how is that going to work out, you know, when we actually get to the project stage, you know, of delivering this project if it's funded. So, you know, just to allow yourself plenty of time, that you're not stuck bringing through partners that you're not excited about working with, just because, you know, you need to reach X amount of partners in the project. I mean, that's not what these projects are about. It's supposed to be a meaningful, rewarding collaboration for everybody involved. And then, yeah, the logistics then. So it's just about, and again, I'm kind of putting more red flags there. If they seem disinterested at this stage, you know, run now and early while you can before entering into a partnership with them. So, but at this point, it's necessary, you know, once you've kind of clarified, right, okay, I am happy with these people, I really do want to bring them through to the actual final stage of partnership. I always kind of create a form for project specific information. So I'll ask them to do a bit of research, because, you know, obviously if I'm writing a project for the Wheel, I know the situation from the Irish perspective, but I don't know what the situation is in Finland or in Germany or in Poland or whatever. So, you know, I always ask them, I kind of put together a short form of information where I ask them what is the status quo in their country regarding this. And I do a bit of work then around, like, kind of understanding the EU policy and linking it in. And then between all of that, within the application, I'm able to kind of make sure that I'm reflecting the status quo in the partner countries, and how that links to European policy, and how and it kind of feeds into why this project should be transnational. Why, you know, if it's too much, you know, from an Irish perspective, if it's too much of, you know, Irish policy and Irish issues and Irish context, and it's not kind of linked in with the challenges that the partners are facing and the issues that they're dealing with, it kind of raises the question of like, well, why is this a European project? Why not just fund this nationally? So, you know, I always get them to do a little bit of research and feed in, and so then I can kind of pick and choose their research and integrate it into the project writing process as necessary. Agree on tasks and responsibilities, and as I said, even distribution is really important. If it's, again, the Irish partner will do this and this and this, and there's no real role for the other partners, that's a big red flag from, you know, a project assessment or evaluation point of view. They want to see that there's a real reason for all of these partners to be in this project, that they're going to do something. So this might mean leading an output or leading an activity. So they might lead in the development of an output, or they might lead a project activity like dissemination or quality control or something like that. So there should be an even distribution of tasks and responsibilities, and the partner should fully understand what it is that they're, you know, make sure whether it's more meetings, more emails, more discussions, whatever it is, that they fully understand what it is they're agreeing to, that they're signing up to, and that they have the capacity to actually do it. So that's very important. And I suppose just to be aware, sometimes organizations can be like, yeah, we can do that, absolutely, and then, you know, it can come to the actual thing and then they're actually not able to do it. So just make sure that, you know, that's why the process of getting to know them and making them feel comfortable to tell you where they are and what it is that they can actually offer is very important. Delegate writing responsibilities. So you know, this is you know, that you can kind of assign them tasks to kind of write up their own outputs, or, you know, do a bit of writing around their own kind of activity within the project that they're responsible for. Any legal agreements, for example, mandates, it varies according to programs. What, you know, in Erasmus, for example, you do have to have a mandate, and that's available. You can just generate it off the Erasmus platform, and they get it and they sign it and stamp it and scan it and send it back. This is something that's just best done early. You kind of can be under the illusion that like, oh, this will be easy, we'll do that at the end, but it's just easier to get it out of the way early in the process, because it can be a real kind of panic towards the end trying to do that. And then if they're new partners, kind of a guide for registering your organization. So if you're participating, it depends on the program, but if you're participating, you need an OID, an organizational ID number, and this is a hyperlink you can click through and learn how to register your organization to participate in certain programs and apply for certain EU programs with this OID. So yeah, and as I said, look out early and often for anything that you think might end up being difficult in terms of working with them later. Co-writing and draft circulation. So then, you know, you're actually kind of writing your application. It's really good to create a lot of EU funding programs use kind of like there's either a platform like Erasmus uses, or an interactive PDF document that can be quite big and clunky, and whatever it is, anyway, often it's a lot easier to create an editable version on Word or something like that. That's just a lot easier for circulation and co-writing and reviewing and things like that. And it's a lot more flexible, and it's not as cumbersome to kind of fill in. And then once you've done that, you copy and paste it into the actual application form at the end. Just be very aware of word counts and character counts. That can kind of trip you up at the end if you're not aware of that. So make a good quality template for yourself in an editable, some kind of editable software. You could try using Teams or Google Docs for reviewing and for circulating drafts and adding in like comments and track changes and things like that. For me, I think there's a real balance of joint responsibility and too many cooks. Like you do want it to be a co-written application, in that you want partners to have the opportunity to shape it and to feed in and to take leadership over their activities and their outputs, and that is important. And particularly because sometimes it's, you know, they might be leading an output that you just don't know anything about. Like when we had a project where we built an e-learning platform, with Consortium, our partners, who I think there's somebody here today from there, and like we wouldn't have had a clue how to write that output because we've never done that before. So you know, you absolutely do want to have a little bit of joint responsibility for writing, but there is a thing, and it's a danger that I've come across sometimes in projects where there's that kind of too many cooks spoil the broth kind of thing. There still needs to be one person who's in charge of actually tying it all together and filling in all the other stuff, the kind of project management stuff, explaining the budgets, collecting profiles, and plugging everything in and everything. So, you know, just to make sure that somebody is designated responsibility for that, because it can get really messy and just be an unpleasant document to read at the end if you're not careful about that. Allowing for 2 rounds of draft circulation. That's very important, you know, that they have one opportunity to review and leave comments, and then a final opportunity for any final comments before you finish up. Allow time for proofreading, and yeah, circulate a final draft and with a final budget, and get sign off before you submit it. That's very important. Yeah, so yeah, there we go. That's the same slide again. So I'm going to very briefly touch on this because it's not really to do with developing partnerships. It's more once you've actually imagine that you've done all of that process, you've submitted your application and it was successful, yay, now you have to kick off the project. So this is more kind of going into project management than partnership building, but I did want to touch on it because it's not just, I mean, consolidating your partnership isn't just about that, you know, getting them together to get the application. I think the initial meeting, when you initially actually come together, ideally in person, obviously with COVID, most initiation meetings, those first partner meetings are happening online, which is a shame. We only had to do that with a project last week, or a couple of weeks ago now, where we had to kick it off online. But it is really important that, you know, you can kind of cement your partnership by going about your first partner meeting and setting up the project on a good foot. And I just always really recommend for a successful partnership to look into developing a project management handbook, because the application forms, particularly for EU funding, I find are just not very friendly when it comes. They're not very useful as project management documents. They're quite long and unwieldy, and they're full of kind of unfriendly, you know, there's a lot in it that can be siphoned down into something that's a lot more accessible and kind of proactive. You know, the application is a persuasive document, whereas the project management handbook is very practical. So you can just look into creating something and just the kind of things that you could think of, and to try and do this, you know, as soon as you've heard that your project is successful, you know, take your application form. It could have been months since you submitted it. So, you know, read over it and try and channel it down into a project management document where you're looking at your project overview, so rationale, outputs, work packages, tasks, KPIs, impact measurement, all the kind of practical to-dos with the project, your management tasks, so things like your reporting, your meetings, those kind of requirements that are involved in the project, your stakeholders and your dissemination, so you're outlining your target groups, your goal, how you're going to monitor dissemination and measure it and report on it. And there's usually a partner that's in charge of that. And you're also going to look at evaluation. How are you going to evaluate your project? What kind of KPIs are you using, and how are you going to collect data to ensure that you are actually delivering the impact that you promised, and that the performance of the project, that, you know, you're reaching your deadlines and things are running smoothly. So have some kind of processes in place for that. Risk and opportunities. So you can, I like to put these two together because where there is risk, there is also opportunity. So to kind of do a brainstorming around that, this can come at your first project meeting, but just to have a section allocated for that in your project management handbook where you brainstorm risks and opportunities together, and that's something that you monitor throughout your project. Internal communications and conflict management, I think this is really important as well. Projects are uniquely challenging experiences. You're working very closely with strangers effectively, usually to high pressure and to high, you know, to deadlines and things like that. So there is going to be conflict, and confronting that, just, you know, right off the bat can be just really helpful to just be like, look, there's going to be times when this is difficult. How can we communicate with each other well? What kind of ground rules can we have in place that will make our cooperation as easy as we possibly can? So that's something that you can kind of co-create together. And then any financial and legal guidelines. So what you'll find is that your document that might be 80 pages, or your application that might be 80 pages of ticking boxes and profiles and descriptions and everything, can be kind of boiled down to a project management handbook of between 10 and 20 pages, depending on the complexity of the project. So it's something that's a lot more accessible, and particularly you have to remember when you are cooperating with European partners, there can be different levels of English. So this is something that can be accessible and easy for everybody. It can make it that if there's staff changes or anything, or a partner change in the lifetime of a project, it becomes this easy communication tool that can just set your partnership off on the right foot. So it's not just about building the partnership, it's also about consolidating it and starting it off on the right foot, and for you to be seen as the leader and as an expert on your project, and as a good kind of that you're a trustworthy, organized coordinator, and doing this whole project management handbook process can really help with that. And then just very briefly on your kickoff meeting, to really take the time to spend the first day understanding your project. Understand that there will have been months and months will have elapsed from when you work together on the application. So, and it could be staff changes, there could be everything. So you kind of have to start completely from zero. You know, have your icebreakers, set some ground rules. There are cultural differences around behavior at meetings, so come up with something that you can all agree on, and that will, you know, hopefully minimize any conflict. Use your project management handbook as your guide throughout the meeting, and encourage them to keep referring to it, and that this is going to be your Bible for this project. You go through your work packages, intellectual outputs, activities, events, and your dissemination, and really lots of brainstorming, lots of interaction. This is about team building as much as it is about understanding the project. Have the activity leaders present their topics. Nobody wants to see you, you know, talking about the project non-stop for 2 days. Let other people lead on their topics, and encourage them to take leadership and ownership of it, and then set immediate goals and timeframes. If you're all talking about it within the abstract for the 2 days that you're together, and there's nothing as solid as set, everybody's just going to go home and forget about it. There needs to be some immediate kind of deadlines and goals set. And then same for the kickoff meet, or same for day 2, I should say. That, you know, this for me, I kind of take this day to kind of understand partnership. People are usually tired from the day before. They've got a good understanding of the project, but you can use this to really focus on, well, okay, we understand the project now, how are we going to work together? So this is where we look at the risks, the opportunities, conflict management. We talk about our different understandings of quality. What does quality mean for us? What do we all want to get out of this as organizations? And then just the last kind of logistics of like how we're going to measure progress and finance and partnership group, any of that kind of technical details, and then overview of everything, and then setting your date for the next meeting and everything. And this is your opportunity to kind of get to know your partners and observe how they're working together. So that's that, and I need to hand over now to Siobhan, who's going to talk about the impact of COVID and the new MFF, the new multi-annual financial framework. That we've got a new fresh batch of EU programs coming out now, because there's a new budget, a new financial framework. So there's changes coming down the line. So in many ways, it's a great time to be getting involved in EU programs, because you've got a nice fresh start if you're new to them. But it does mean that things are a little bit confusing at the moment, and we're waiting to hear how this new MFF is going to impact projects. So I'll hand over to Siobhan now to say a little bit about that whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Emma. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen because I have a few slides. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now.
I'm not seeing your slides yet, Siobhan, there.
No, okay, let me try again. And just come out of that. Okay, is that working for you now?
Perfect. Thanks,
Great.
Will.
So yeah, thanks, Emma. So Emma had invited me to say a few words about. Obviously, we're not in kind of the normal. We're under very different circumstances for working on European projects at the moment. Obviously, there's restrictions on travel, so this has had a big impact on what are essentially very much mobility and cooperation projects, and you know, many of the activities center around face-to-face activities for these projects. So yeah, the projects have been continuing, many of them, especially the partnership projects, because partners have found that they've been able to adapt many parts of their project to the a kind of virtual cooperation. So as a result, there's lots of online partnership meetings happening through Zoom, through Teams, whatever. And then partners have been able to keep developing their outputs and sharing their resources that they're developing through online tools, for example, through Google Docs. Some projects have been able to undertake online training. We even had one project who undertook a 3-week summer school online. So it has been possible for many projects to keep going, and also holding promotional activities, dissemination activities online has also been possible. And in many cases, you know, projects have found that it's sometimes it's more difficult. Sometimes there's actually advantages to working online that they hadn't kind of foreseen before. An example could be for some of a dissemination event that you're holding for your project, you might find that you can reach a wider range of people online and across a wider range of target groups. So there have been obviously pros and cons of having to move to virtual cooperation. And we are getting information, for example, that some aspects of this, even when we can move back to face-to-face, obviously lots of partners say nothing nothing can top a face-to-face meeting for getting to know your partners and working with your partners. And I think it's been particularly difficult if you have to kick off your partnership project online and not have that first face-to-face and social contact with them. So obviously that is still going to be a big feature of the projects going forward once we can get back to a situation where we can travel across Europe. But there are certain aspects of the projects that I think will be still a feature going forward. For example, there's lots of new ideas and learning around blended training and blended learning. And I think certain aspects of that will continue. As I mentioned, some dissemination activities have been very successful, and that's definitely, and we've had confirmation already from the Commission for Erasmus Plus that is an aspect that will be possible going forward throughout the new programme. And then also the current pandemic has also, I suppose, brought new themes and priorities to the core, really. For example, they just had a recent call to as a response to the pandemic for digital readiness and culture and creativity. So, you know, there's specific areas that and priorities that have now been, I suppose, more prominent as a result of the pandemic. I can imagine going forward that there's going to be very big focus on areas like, you know, creativity, maybe hospitality, unemployment, mental health issues. All of those areas are going to be a priority now for the next few years as a result of the pandemic. So then just as Emma mentioned, there is a new multi-annual financial framework. And what that means is that basically every 7 years, the Commission reviews their budget. And that affects all of the programs that are run by the European Commission, because it means they have to look at the budgets that are available across the programs. They set new priorities for the programs, etc. So the same that's also the case, obviously, with Erasmus Plus. So that's we're starting a new program now from 2021, and the budget for that program has is in the process of just being approved. It looks like there'll be an overall budget of around 23 billion. So that's that main part of that multi-annual financial framework where they're setting the budget for the program. But they also develop new priorities as for the program. A big priority is going to be sustainability. So there's really going to be 3 main priorities that are they're promoting across all of the types of projects, no matter what type of project you're undertaking, and that's sustainability, inclusion, and digital. So no matter what project that you would be looking at participating in, it will need to include aspects of those 3 priorities, and they are releasing additional funding within a project as well. You can apply for additional funding, for example, for inclusion or sustainability to promote those priorities. So that's a key new aspect of this multi-annual financial framework for the Erasmus Plus programme. And then they're introducing also some new types of projects or types of activities. Under Erasmus, they're going to introduce an accreditation for the mobility side of the programme. So not the partnership side, but the mobility side. So, university exchanges, vocational education exchanges, etc., and school exchanges. In terms of the partnership side, which you're probably more interested in, they're introducing a new type of project called small-scale partnership. And I think this could be of interest to a lot of organizations who are just starting off in European projects. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And they're also introducing a kind of network aspect as well called Centres of Excellence. And that's going to be particularly within vocational education and training. So in relation to the partnerships for cooperation. So partnerships for cooperation, if you were familiar with the previous program, these were previously known as strategic partnerships. So the new name is partnerships for cooperation, and there's going to be 2 types of partnerships for cooperation. One is cooperation partnerships, a little bit confusing. Cooperation's mentioned a couple of times in there, but cooperation partnerships are going to be replacing the strategic partnerships, really. And as Emma said at the start, often you need a minimum of 3 organizations from 3 different program countries to participate in these. And that's going to be the same for this cooperation partnerships activity. The new small scale partnerships, though, that's going to be a smaller activity in relation to, it can be shorter. It can range from 6 to 24 months. And the difference there is you only need 2 organizations from 2 program countries to apply. So again, that makes it more accessible. So you don't even need to look for 3 or 4 partners. You can participate with 2. Might be better to have 3 just in case, but you are eligible to participate with just 2 partners from 2 different program countries. And they're introducing an additional deadline per year, so you don't have to wait a year then to apply for that type of project, because there'll be 2 deadlines a year. We don't know the dates of the deadlines yet because we're still waiting on those to be confirmed. And then just to add as well, that the aims of those type of projects, so the cooperation partnerships, they're really still focusing on exchanging good practice between organizations, but also working to jointly develop new tools or training or new methodologies among the partnerships, and you will be looking at then developing tangible results really as a result of those. And then the small scale partnerships, as I said, they're aiming to widen the access of the programme to those organisations that might be harder to reach or maybe haven't participated in this type of programme before. And they're focusing on engagement and exchange with partners across Europe on a common theme. And also it will allow more flexible formats. So there'll be both transnational activities, so activities across the different countries, but also national activities are also going to be possible as long as they have a European dimension to them. And I think one of the really good things about the new program is that the small scale partnerships, that's going to be lump sum funding. So you won't have to, the budget will be more straightforward. It'll be basically, you'll be awarded a lump sum for undertaking a variety of activities, and probably between, we don't know the figures yet, but probably between 30 to 60,000 for the partnership. So it is a relatively small amount of funding, but as said, if you only need one other partner from one other country, there's a lot that you can do with that sort of funding. And also, you know, it's kind of less responsibility of having to start off with a project where you're maybe dealing with, you know, a couple of €100,000. And as I said, there is that additional deadline. And I think the other positive aspect is that there's going to be separate quality criteria for these small scale partnerships, which means that, you know, it's the quality criteria when the quality criteria is for when the evaluators are actually selecting the projects, that it's going to be very much tailored to the size of those projects, and hopefully will mean that projects will again find it easier in terms of that competitive process of applying for funding. So yeah, and that's all. I just to say that then, you know, in terms of the new funding, that we will be running some new workshops to kick off that. Again, we don't have the program guide yet, so we're not we don't have actual dates. Once we get the program guide date, we will do those. But we are going to just to kind of, I suppose, complement what Emma has already gone through in relation to kicking off your project and that design aspect of your project, trying to put it together. And we are planning to run a workshop for the Erasmus Plus partnerships aspect of Erasmus Plus at around the end of February. We don't have a date yet. We're just finalizing that at the moment, and then we'll hold actual application workshops for the new types of projects, the cooperation partnerships and the small scale partnerships during the month of March. So if you wanting to get any more information on those, you can contact me directly. That's my email address. You can also sign up to our newsletters. There's a link there. And then just to add as well that in relation to, you know, developing your own project management handbook, there's lots of tips on developing your own partnership project in this European Project Management Handbook that we developed as a result of a transnational cooperation activity a couple of years ago. And that's freely available to download from that link as well. So hopefully that's just given you an idea of what's to come, what the current situation is with the Erasmus Plus projects and what's to come in the months and years ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Siobhan. And we did just share the link for that project management handbook in the chat. So if people are looking for it, they can click through, but you will receive, just so that, to answer another question that came up, everything will be emailed to you after the event, including a link to fill out a partnership profile, any links that were mentioned in today's presentations, templates, things like that. So, and if there is anything that we've missed, always feel free to get in contact with us at europe@wheel.ie or emma@wheel.ie, and we will, of course, you know, share any of that with you. And as well as that, I suppose, just to kind of remind you that Access Europe is here also to help. So I would really encourage you to sign up to any of the individual kind of national agencies newsletters and follow them on social media. So whether that's Lergus, or there's been quite a few in the comments who, like for example, the Health Research Board are the contact point for health funding. Kay Duggan Walls was in the comments there and she shared that. The Southern Regional Assembly, even I don't think Sports Ireland are a contact point, but they do have Cormac MacDonald there. He was also in the comments. They provide support for sports organisations around this type of access to EU funding. So find out who's active in these fields, subscribe to their newsletters, follow them on social media, actively engage, reach out to them to keep yourself informed. And then Access Europe is also here to kind of help support you, that if you don't know where your project belongs in the array of programs that are available, we can help signpost you, and we can also provide other practical help when it comes to application review, kind of advice around partnership building, project management advice, help kind of getting things set up and kicked off and everything like that, and kind of any other kind of mentoring or help that you might need. So Access Europe is very much kind of a central hub, but we're signposting you to the people who are actually experts on their programs. And as I said, scroll through the comments there, and there's been a few people who've shared their contact details. Geraldine, who came in earlier, is the contact for that Marie Curie Sklodowska actions at the Irish University Association, and there's plenty more. So make sure to kind of inform yourself about that, and to share and to follow the right people, and to access the array of help that is there of people who are experts and can help mentor you through this process. So with that, we are running a little bit tight on time. So my colleague Emily is going to give a short kind of case study of a project that she was involved in when she worked at the Ballymun Job Centre up until right before Christmas. So this is a very recent project that she's been freshly involved in. So she's going to give you a little bit of insight into that. We are going to stay on for an extra 10 or 15 minutes for questions. So if you can stay, great. You're more than welcome to stay and ask some questions. If you can't, not to worry, you will receive the recorded presentation and event from today anyway, so you'll be able to kind of tune in and listen back to the questions. But I'll hand over to Emily now just to share her kind of first-hand experience of EU project partnerships. So whenever you're ready, Emily.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, my name's Emily. I'm the other new EU programs officer here. So my main responsibility is going to be answering any kind of general advice queries that you might have about the different aspects of being involved in EU funding, and also to develop a suite of training events for everybody. So obviously Christina and Emma and I have a range of our own kind of EU funded experience to draw on to create those training events, but we really want to hear from you guys what kind of the gaps in knowledge are. Maybe it's project management, risk management. So if you just send us an email and let us know what you're looking to hear more about or learn more about, that would be really great, so we can develop some really meaningful trainings for you guys. Yeah, and so I'm just going to kind of close out on a warm and fuzzy note with a case study of a successful partnership that I was involved in and the challenges that we had and overcame. So the project I was involved in was called Understanding My Journey, Supporting Soft Skills Development for Young People. And it was a 3-year Erasmus Plus Key Action 2 project. So that's cooperation for innovation and the exchange of good practices. It was quite a big partnership. So there were 8 partners with the organization that I was involved in, Ballymun Job Centre, as the project coordinator. And the aim of the project was kind of what the name suggests, to create soft skills development tools for young people. And here is a photo of the original cast of Understanding My Journey back in 2018 in our Dublin meeting. So what were the challenges that we had to deal with as a partnership? So we had quite a few. The first few were kind of challenges that we knew about from the onset and that we could prepare for. And so those were that the partners, none of us had ever worked together before, and that this was one partner's first experience of being involved in an EU funded project. The other challenges emerged kind of during the lifetime of the project. And those were that one of the partners dropped out after the completion of intellectual output 1, so quite early on in the project. There were disagreements over intellectual output development. And of course, COVID-19 occurred at a very crucial stage in our project, was right when we were supposed to start disseminating all of our project outputs in person. So aside from a global pandemic, all of these things are pretty common challenges that you'll come up against. And even with COVID-19, as long as you have kind of a strong partnership and good project management practices in place, you can overcome most of these things, which we did. So how did we overcome these challenges? So the first thing I would say that we did, which is really helpful and which Emma and Siobhan have touched on, is really taking the time to learn about each other as organizations. So spending time understanding what your strengths are, what your areas for development are, what your organizational cultures are, and what your other commitments are outside of the project, so that you can set realistic expectations for what and how much each partner can contribute. And ensure that everybody kind of gets the experience that they want and develops the skills that they want, and that tasks and roles are appropriately designated. The next thing would be, we really ensured that there was a collaborative approach. It can be really hard to kind of lose sight of that and become very task oriented and lose sight of the group approach. So what we did to ensure that we stayed collaborative was kind of by sharing ownership of different project activities, particularly for people that weren't leading an intellectual output. So we would kind of assign people to be a chair of an internal working group, so maybe a chair of a dissemination group or a monitoring and evaluation group. And so that way there was kind of a balance of people that had the experience working on these different areas and people that could learn from the partners that already had that experience. So kind of sharing the knowledge, a good exchange of practice. A really important thing is, of course, frequent and transparent communication. So it kind of has to be a two-way street. So you need to be very open with partners if there's something that you don't understand, if there's a task that you don't really know how to complete, instead of just kind of being quiet, because then people will just make assumptions that you're not pulling your weight. So just be confident that you can speak up and ask for support from your partners, and also letting them know if there's kind of a massive organizational change that's going to affect your ability to contribute to the partnership. And kind of the way that we established effective modes of communication is by giving people different venues to communicate. So for example, we would have a lot of kind of Zoom meetings in between our physical transnational meetings. And because there are different levels of English, people might not feel comfortable speaking on those calls. So we utilized the chat function and made sure that everybody could contribute in some way or form. And also kind of normalized the fact that you could have one-to-one meetings with us as project lead and just with other partners if there was something that you kind of need specific support on. And that became really invaluable, particularly after one of our partners left and during COVID, so people could really get that support from each other and know what was going on and not feel like they were in the dark about changes to the project. And then another important thing that we did was regularly monitoring the progress of the project and adapting our methods accordingly. So we had a lot of internal monitoring in place. We did a lot of evaluations after our transnational meetings, so we could pick up on things that people weren't happy with, so disagreements over intellectual output development, and kind of nip those in the bud and put processes in places so that there was more transparency and cohesion. So that's a very important thing to do. And then the most important thing that I would say is that we really took time to build a strong rapport and support each other. And we did that by kind of doing team building activities at each of our transnational meetings. And by that, I don't mean that you need to go out and like do an obstacle course together or something like that. It can be as simple as kind of like going for drinks before a group dinner or doing like a walking tour of the city that you're in. This is a photo of all of us after doing a historic tram tour in Lisbon. So that was really nice. And I think just kind of like recognizing that it's not just about the work you're doing, but about the cultural exchange element as well. And that's really invaluable. And so as a result of kind of putting all these practices in place, what did our partnership achieve? So all of our project goals and deadlines were met. We created a range of innovative tools that got excellent feedback from both the young people and the practitioners that piloted the tools. Partners entered into new projects with each other after the UMJ was completed and during UMJ actually, so that's a good sign that we liked each other and worked effectively together. And then finally, our external evaluation found that all of the partners thought that it was a kind of a learning partnership with all of the partners being influenced by the group's different skills and dynamics. So a positive experience for all. Thanks. So I guess back to you,
Great.
Emma.
Thank you very much, Emily. And I think it's really helpful to just hear that kind of personal experience of actually being part of one of these projects. Very much mirrors the Wheel Zone experience. We've had 2 Erasmus Plus projects now, and I was part of about 7 or 8 projects before I ever came to the Wheel. And like, it can be a very varied, interesting experience, but overall, there's always something kind of very valuable to be learned. So it's definitely worth it. And just to finish up, just to push up here that, you know, the Access Europe project, I really encourage you to sign up. We can provide all of that kind of training, advice, one-to-one support, anything that you need to get started. And with thanks, of course, to the Department of Foreign Affairs for funding Access Europe. There's a link there to the website, to our Twitter, and if you'd like to tweet about anything, just hashtag Access Europe. So just to kind of remind you about that, to please do sign up. And as somebody mentioned in the chat box as well, you know, we also do a newsletter that goes out every month that compiles and in a succinct, condensed way, the various EU funding opportunities that are coming up in that month or in the next few months that have been released. So it's really valuable and saves an awful lot of kind of research and legwork if you just subscribe to that. It's all free, of course. You don't have to be a member of the Wheel to sign up, so we'd really encourage you to do that. And just, I'm going to, as I said, we will stay on for an extra 15 minutes for questions, although we have been answering them as we go in the chat box, so hopefully that's resolved them. A lot of them. I do want to just hand over to Sinead to revisit our Mentimeter and see how we're getting on. So Sinead, do you want to do that, and maybe people can update us about how they feel around European partnership now. So Sinead, when you're ready.
Okay.
And reshare the same question again, I think.
Joke. So here you go again. If you head back to menti.com and add in the code for 363339. I don't know why I'm struggling with that number so much today. 4363339. You should get the second slide where you can pop in all these fabulous positive words.
Yeah.
Lovely. You can see down the bottom right hand corner there as well how many people have submitted their answers too.
Well, I am reassured to see lots of very kind of hopeful comments there and confident. That's really excellent to see, and still people being excited and feeling informed and supported. So that's excellent, and it can seem like, I completely understand, like it's so weird and strange kind of area to get into, and it can seem like, how do you even go about this? And like what we shared here today, it isn't any kind of magical formula. There is no like secret knowledge. It is just reaching out, building up your networks, you know, getting the help that's there. There's lots of really excellent quality advice and support from all the national agencies and contact points and everything, many of whom put in their contact details into the chat and are there and available and just want you to kind of reach out. So, you know, it can seem impossible, but it is very practical, and lots of organizations have done it really successfully and are learning and growing and having a great experience with these projects, and a consistent source of funding and new projects and new innovations and new ideas, because they took this time to build up those networks and to build their capacity. So thank you very, very much for that, and for everybody for taking part. We will allow for, if people have, I don't know if you know this little hands up function within Zoom, but if you have any questions, you can feel free to kind of put your hand up or unmute yourself and ask now if you like. We'll hang around for another couple of minutes, but we understand as well if people have other kind of commitments that they need to do. Maybe Sinead, can you remind people of where that hands up function is, including me, because I can't seem to remember where it is.
So for me, I think the quickest, hang on, because I'm a host, I don't think I'm able to put my hand up. I think the quickest way to get to it is if you pop into that participants list. So that's the two little silhouettes down the bottom of your screen, and if you'll spot your name at the top there, and I think if you hit more, it should come down, it should be in the pop down menu for you there. As well, so maybe if you hit on the three dots on the top right hand side corner of your own profile picture, you should get it there too.
We'll just have a look at the oh, some nice comments in the chat box there, so thank you very much to everybody. If there are any questions, if you'd rather ask in the chat box, of course we'll just hang on for a few minutes. If people need to go as well, that's totally fine. I know we're just at time now, so you might have other kind of things lined up, or maybe we've answered all of your questions because we've just such effective presentations. We'll see. So
sorry, Emma,
yes.
it's Will here from Special Olympics International. Thank you for your fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you, Siobhan, as well, from Lagos. I'd just like to say, over the last 10 years, Special Olympics International in Europe have been very, very successful in EU grants. And each year we go to the networking events and we go to the information day. And it's always kind of a little bit of a concern that there's so few Irish partners within that room. And it's always a feeling that there's so many opportunities out there to gain partnerships. And we talked to the sports unit and they encourage the Irish to apply. We're in partnerships with partners who have 40 other grants on an annual basis from Italy, Bulgaria, a number of EU countries. And it always falls back to the Irish, and the sports unit have an open joke with Special Olympics International. Will you encourage the Irish entities, charities to apply for more grants? So just one thing, it's not that difficult. You do the small steps, you do the homework, and you will most likely be successful. And if you're not successful, you get a fantastic evaluation letter, which you learn from each application, which you can use to move forward for your next application.
Yep, Absolutely, William, you're completely right. And it's lovely to see organisations who have cracked the code and who are doing it and doing it well. And you're absolutely right that there isn't enough Irish representation. And I don't know what that is. I think there's a number of reasons. I think geography might have something to do with it, and feeling a little bit further away from Europe or something like that. I don't know. But I suppose that's what Access Europe was set up to try and address, to try and encourage more organisations and civil society organisations, especially, obviously, to get involved. Because I think when it comes to academia and industry, I think Ireland is very active in EU projects and EU funding, but not so much when it comes to civil society, which is what we're hoping to address. And you're absolutely right, William, that it's hard at first, that the learning curve is steep, and you might be not successful in your first couple of applications, but it's all learning. And once you crack it, it becomes kind of operational. It becomes just, you know, you apply every year and you have a number of projects on the go at any one time, and it becomes quite a you know, at the wheel anyway, we're really using it as a way now that we've cracked it. I wrote their first European project back in 2017, and it started in 2018. And now we plan to apply every year, and we're using it very strategically to enhance our training program for Erasmus wise. Now we're looking at other EU funding opportunities as well, but you can kind of build it into your strategy. So it's not, I suppose you don't have to see it as this extra thing. It can be something that's really complementary to your strategic plans, your goals, and that it's even better if it is like that. You know, you're more likely to be funded, and you're more likely to have impactful, lasting projects. So yeah, absolutely, William. Thank you for that. And I see one hand up. Faye, do you want to come in there? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to say, sorry, it's an observation just on the work that I've been doing, but I run a Young Carers project in County Roscommon, and I'm also representing Vita House, which it's part of, which is a community development organisation, but very much focused on capacity building, and we want to look at the social enterprise side of things. But I was looking at I did a social analysis on young carers before Christmas based on a report that had come out from Family Carers Ireland, and some data that had been some work on youth work that had been done around with UIG in Galway. So sorry, short story long, I always manage to do that. But one of the things, and I think that you referenced it at the beginning, about how important it is to link it into the EU programmes and to go back through those and to pick out key phrases, key objectives, the things that are being replicated. And one of the things that I noticed through research that I did for my social analysis was a lot of the work around young carers pointed to early school leadership, which then looked at a lot of the EU focus on preventing early school leadership because of the economic impact that has on various states over the course of the years, in terms of early school leavers not being able to contribute as much to the economy, or also being somebody that has to claim a lot of social welfare during the course of their life. So I think a lot of the projects, particularly around youth, on that capacity building and on that kind of youth development and school leadership, and you can go then beyond that. I think it's kind of like digging deeper a little bit into a lot of all of the EU goals, and there's a lot of information there in there. And one piece of advice, or one thing that I found useful when I was doing this, is go down the rabbit hole. There's a lot of links, and go down the rabbit holes, and that will take you then to what the ultimate goal in the EU is, I suppose. And I find if you can link it back into that, not that I've not successful in EU funding yet, but in my own successes with grant funding, kind of more on a national level in Ireland, it is definitely following that kind of path as to what the goals are.
Absolutely, Faye, completely, yeah. And there is a bit of a rabbit hole, and I'd be the first person to say, because I spent a good portion of my life sifting through EU websites, they're not the friendliest. Now, I think the national contact point ones are quite nice, but the actual EU Commission websites can be a complete maze and quite kind of deep and confusing and everything. But it is well worth understanding. Like, even when you read the policy goals, you realise, well, that's what we're doing. That's what the sector in Ireland is doing. We have a real role to play. We're valuable here. We have something to offer to the EU in terms of helping to further their objectives in the various things that we're working on, particularly when it does come to what you were talking about, Faye, in terms of youth and employment and stuff like that. So there's huge potential there, and it is about, I suppose, tying them in together. And I will say that another kind of priority of Access Europe will be, once the kind of new priorities will come out, well, we know what some of the new priorities are, but understanding as the new programs are released over the next couple of months, the programs that are going to serve us from 2021 to 2027 as part of this multi-annual financial framework, once they're released, we'll be able to we at Access Europe will be able to see more clearly the links between the policy and these new programs. And we will hope to maybe make that an easier process to be able to identify that, so that you don't have to go as far down the rabbit hole, and we can do that legwork and make it so that you can more easily link and understand, oh, okay, so the idea of this program is that it's to further this policy objective, and here is some more information about this policy objective and how Irish civil society might be able to link in with it. That's so, you know, that's another piece of work that we're going to do around trying to demystify the linking of policy and programs, and make it easier for you to understand those connections. So I see Hugh as well has.
Can I just say on that?
Oh yeah, sorry, Faye, go ahead. Or
Sorry.
who?
I was just going to say I was at a different webinar yesterday, which was on actually the way that there's a new process been launched, a new project been launched by Simon Harris around research, and about how there's going to be a lot more focus on expert research being completed to feed into national policy, and how national policy is being drafted. I think there's a huge opportunity there for linking into that research to then link it not only to national policy, but to bring it back to the EU policy, so that you're going in there with not only a fantastic project, but also huge facts and figures to back it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we're very kind of committed to at the Wheel is promoting engaged research. So that's where civil society is an equal partner with academia or research or think tanks around developing policy, so that we end up with policy that is more, you know, for and by the people who are going to be affected by it, rather than something that's kind of developed distant from them. So that's great. Just Hugh, I see your hand up there.
Hi, Emma. Thanks very much. I work for Bernardo's, and last year, thanks to yourself and the Wheel, we applied for funding under Horizon 2020 gender-based violence for a project around the impact of domestic abuse on children. And what was interesting about this is kind of unusual in that there was no requirement for an international partner. So we partnered with TUSLA. There was a requirement for a partnership. So we partnered with TUSLA, and we're hoping to go again, maybe not this year, but if not, then next year. Yeah. And I don't know if, you know, we may not, if the same criteria are there, we may not partner with someone internationally, but the point system in the application seems to be quite tilted towards having some engagement with with other organizations in EU member states. As you know, dissemination at an EU level seems to be quite important. Added value at an EU level seems to be quite important. So have you any advice on how to make those connections short of a partnership, and how to kind of, like, we did have some discussions. We got in touch with a Spanish organization that was doing an interesting project, and we discussed with them, we got advice from them. But I suppose, you know, are there any kind of, are there any patterns or templates or common things that organizations do short of a partnership that add EU value and that can kind of tick those boxes? If we can again.
I would, thanks for that, Hugh. Yeah, and I remember your application. So yeah, no, it's I would link you back to those kind of networks. So I would be like, we're active in anything to do with civil society in Europe, as in like really joining the networks. Sometimes there is a small fee involved, but often they're free. Joining the networks, participating in meetings, and building those kind of links where you don't have to have a formalized kind of partnership together, but it shows that your organization is active on an EU level. So there will be a number of, I think, Europe-wide networks, often facilitated and funded in some way by the Commission, that will deal with areas relevant to Bernardo's, whether child welfare or children's rights, or, you know, I'm sure you'll be able to find any multitude of them, and we'd be happy to, I can link you with Emily who could help you with that. And I would really recommend, like, it can feel like, oh, this is so low on the priority list to be attending these meetings, and, you know, filling out forms or doing bits of contributing towards bits of research and stuff, but it just shows that your organization is active on EU level. And it means that when it comes to an application, you can say like, oh, we have a consolidated long-standing partnership, we've done X, Y, and Z with this network, and we would use them as, and I think somebody mentioned earlier on about non-funded partners. You can use people as associated partners. I don't know if you've ever seen that, and Siobhan, you can come in here if you want, but you can use them around different programs. These are non-funded partners who are vouching for your project and supporting your project and agreeing, you know, they won't get a budget, but they're agreeing to disseminate it or to feed into it in some way, or to act as a kind of an advisory partner in it. So that can help to build in the European element without needing to have a formal partnership. But Siobhan, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there on that.
Yeah, not really anything to add, just to say that we have definitely seen projects that, I mean, apart from belonging to a European network, sometimes what they do is bring in the European network as a partner in the project. And lots of European networks are happy to be partners in these type of projects, or as an associate partner where they don't actually receive funding, but they contribute. And sometimes they will provide a letter to go with your application, just to say that they're interested in the outcomes of the project and they're happy to support you, and also to further disseminate the outputs of those projects. So yeah, the European networks in that respect, or even it might not even be. It might be your partners within your project who are members of those networks, and at least that means that at partnership level, the project will be disseminated at the European level, even if your own organization doesn't necessarily have all of those connections built up, you know.
Yeah, I think that I had experience with that. We had that one project, it was around physical activity in older people and training carers around basic kind of physical activity. And we had an expert from Israel. So she was an outside of the EU, but she was such an expert that she was brought in exceptional circumstances. And she was the chair of an EU network around kind of physical activity for older people and well-being, and they were associated partners. So, you know, kind of having it would almost, I'd always at least try to kind of link a project in with some kind of European network, so that, you know, you have the dissemination that happens through you and your partners, if you do have partners, but then you also have this kind of pan-European element as well. So that can be really useful. I'm going to, thanks for that, Hugh. I hope that answers your question a little bit. I'm just going to address a couple of the questions that came up in the chat box, and then we'll try and finish up there if everybody's happy with that. Can there be two partners from one country in a partnership for Erasmus Plus projects? Yes, there can be. The Wheel was a partner with Consortium, and Maria Flanagan is here. She was our partner in that project, so we partnered with them. Now, you would try to even it out with maybe another EU partner. You wouldn't want to have a partnership that was very kind of Irish heavy, you know, like you try and even it out by having a nice distribution of partners from other EU countries as well. And we even try to, I would say that it's really recommended to have a good geographical spread, that it's not too Western Europe or too Northern Europe, you know, to involve kind of, and Southern European countries are very active in EU projects, but even the kind of newer member states as well, there's a real value in having that there as well. Somebody had asked about, is that linking to Irish policy to projects or European policy? So when we talked about the linking of policy and projects, I would say there's no harm in mentioning that it also complements Irish objectives. There's nothing wrong with that, but I would always in the application keep it focused at EU policy, because it's Europe that's funding the project, so they want to see you that it ties into EU policies. And I'd always kind of caution about being too, like if you're an Irish coordinator, talking too much about Ireland and the Irish context and all that kind of stuff, because that might beg the question, well, why don't you just get this funded nationally? What's the value in this being European? So you want to, while there's no harm in mentioning why it's particularly important in your country and in your partner, the countries of your partners as well. And that's why I would say, when I mentioned there, to get them to do a bit of research about the status quo in their country, like, is this a particular problem for them? Like maybe it's something like youth unemployment or something, like, you know, just for them to have an awareness of what are the stats and what are the key figures and stuff that you can reference. So, you know, absolutely allude to the fact that this is especially relevant at national level for you and for your partners, but try to stick to mainly kind of referencing EU policy and linking it in with that. So I think that is it. I'm going to give people one last chance if they want to kind of shout, if they have a last kind of comment or anything, and there's some really nice ones there. Yeah, nothing about us without us. Yeah, absolutely excellent, Faye. That's a perfect way of summing up the whole idea of engaged research. So yeah, okay, well look, we will leave it there. Thank you so much to everybody for being here and for being excellent participants in today's session. I'm sorry we went a bit over, but we did have way more than we thought at this group. We had over 127 participants at one point, so I wanted to allow time for enough questions and everything. But yeah, thank you very, very much. As I said, sign up to Access Europe. You'll get the follow-up in the next few days with all the links, materials, everything, and any questions at all. Always just feel free to get in touch with me, emma@wheel.ie or europe@wheel.ie, and we'll be happy to help you. Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you to all my speakers, Siobhan and Christina and Emily as well. Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.